For decades, U.S. warships sailed the world's oceans with near total freedom. That era may have just ended. Brazil has made a move no one in Washington expected, shutting the door on American warships, and what this decision signals could reshape global naval power for a generation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. What is unfolding in Brazil right now is far more than a routine diplomatic disagreement or a temporary military restriction. It represents a defining moment in modern geopolitics, one that signals a deeper transformation in how power, sovereignty, and military influence are exercised in the 21st century. Brazil's decision to restrict access for United States warships is not simply about port permissions or naval logistics. It is a clear and deliberate assertion of national sovereignty, and more importantly, a reflection of a rapidly evolving global order where traditional assumptions about American dominance are being openly questioned. For decades, the United States Navy has operated across much of the world with near unrestricted access, particularly in regions long viewed as part of Washington's strategic backyard. The South Atlantic, and Latin America more broadly, have historically fallen into this category. Brazil's move challenges that legacy head-on, and the implications are profound. To understand the significance of Brazil's decision, we must first understand what it breaks away from. For much of the post-World War II era, U.S. naval power has relied on a vast network of friendly ports, cooperative governments, and strategic agreements. These arrangements allowed American warships to refuel, resupply, rotate crews, and maintain an enduring presence far from home waters. Brazil has long been considered a reliable partner in this system. While not a formal military ally in the same way as NATO members, Brazil traditionally maintained cooperative defense relations with Washington, particularly in maritime security, counter-narcotics operations, and regional stability initiatives. That is what makes this decision so striking. By denying U.S. warships access to its ports, Brazil is effectively saying that historical cooperation does not equate to automatic compliance. Sovereignty comes first, national interest comes first, and foreign military access is no longer guaranteed simply because it once was. Brazil's move cannot be separated from the broader global trend toward multipolarity. We are no longer living in a world dominated by a single superpower whose military presence is unquestioned. Instead, we are entering an era where regional powers, countries like Brazil, India, Turkey, Indonesia, and others are increasingly confident in asserting control over their strategic environments. Brazil is the largest economy in Latin America. It possesses vast natural resources, an expanding defense industry, and one of the most strategically important coastlines in the world. The South Atlantic connects Africa, South America, and key global trade routes, making it far more than a peripheral theater. By exercising control over who operates within its ports and waters, Brazil is reinforcing a simple but powerful message. External powers must respect national authority, regardless of past arrangements or expectations. This is not anti-American posturing for the sake of symbolism. It is a calculated move rooted in Brazil's evolving perception of its own role in global affairs. The timing of this decision is just as important as the decision itself. The world is currently experiencing heightened geopolitical tension. Competition between major powers is intensifying across multiple domains: military, economic, technological, and diplomatic. Traditional alliances are under strain, and many nations are reassessing where they stand. Brazil's decision comes at a moment when countries across the global south are increasingly unwilling to be viewed as extensions of Western strategic frameworks. Instead, they are seeking greater autonomy, flexibility, and leverage. By restricting U.S. naval access now, Brazil signals that it intends to operate independently in this new environment. It is positioning itself not as a subordinate partner, but as a sovereign actor capable of setting boundaries even with the world's most powerful military. This decision also sends a message to other emerging powers. Asserting sovereignty is not only possible, it is increasingly normalized. Beyond symbolism and diplomacy, the operational consequences of Brazil's move are immediate and tangible. Naval power depends on access. Warships cannot operate indefinitely without refueling, maintenance, crew rest, and logistical support. Ports are not optional conveniences, they are strategic necessities. By denying access, Brazil forces U.S. military planners to reconsider assumptions that have guided South Atlantic operations for generations. Supply chains must be adjusted. Deployment timelines must be reworked. Contingency plans must be updated. This introduces friction into what was once a relatively predictable operational environment. Even more importantly, it exposes a vulnerability. U.S. Naval dominance is not solely a function of technology or fleet size. It also depends on political consent. When that consent is withdrawn, even partially, strategic flexibility is reduced. Other nations, both allies and rivals, are watching closely. Brazil's decision resonates far beyond its own borders. As the most influential country in Latin America, Brazil often sets the tone for regional behavior. When Brazil asserts itself, others take notice. This move may encourage neighboring countries to reconsider their own defense relationships, port access agreements, and military cooperation frameworks. It introduces the idea that saying no to Washington is not unthinkable and does not automatically result in isolation. This does not mean Latin America is turning against the United States. Rather, it suggests a shift toward a more transactional, interest-based approach to cooperation. Access is no longer automatic. It must be negotiated, justified, and aligned with national priorities. That alone represents a significant change in regional dynamics. For much of modern history, Western naval powers, particularly the United States, have enjoyed near uncontested freedom of movement across the world's oceans. That era is increasingly being challenged. Brazil's decision highlights a key reality of modern geopolitics. Control over maritime spaces is not just about ships and weapons, but about political authority. Every port call, every joint exercise, every patrol route now carries deeper geopolitical meaning. Permission matters, consent matters, sovereignty matters. This is especially true in regions where emerging powers are determined to avoid being drawn into great power competition on terms set by others. Brazil is making it clear that it will not allow its territory or infrastructure to be used in ways that conflict with its strategic vision. There is also a question of credibility at stake. When a country long viewed as a cooperative partner denies access, it inevitably raises questions about influence. Allies may wonder whether U.S. leverage is weakening. Rivals may interpret the move as evidence that American dominance is more fragile than it appears. This perception matters. Global power is not just exercised, it is perceived. When access is restricted, even temporarily, it challenges assumptions about reach and reliability. For U.S. policymakers, the challenge is not merely logistical, it is strategic. How does Washington adapt to a world where cooperation must be continually earned rather than assumed? From Brazil's perspective, this decision is not reckless or impulsive. It reflects a careful strategic calculation. By asserting control over its ports, Brazil strengthens its negotiating position. It signals independence without overt confrontation. It demonstrates capability without escalation. Brazil is not closing itself off from international cooperation. Instead, it is redefining the terms under which that cooperation occurs. This approach aligns with Brazil's broader foreign policy tradition, emphasizing autonomy, multilateral engagement, and resistance to external pressure. In this sense, the denial of U.S. naval access is not an act of hostility, it is an act of self-definition. What makes this moment particularly significant is that it turns the abstract concept of multipolarity into a concrete operational reality. Multipolarity is often discussed in theoretical terms: shifts in economic power, diplomatic influence, or military spending. Brazil's decision shows how it manifests in practice. It means emerging powers exercising control over strategic choke points. It means established powers adapting to new constraints. It means the rules of engagement evolving in real time. Brazil has effectively demonstrated that multipolarity is not a future possibility, it is already here. One of the most important questions now is whether Brazil's move will inspire similar actions elsewhere. Other nations with strategic ports, waterways, or geographic leverage may see this as a precedent. If Brazil can assert sovereignty without severe consequences, others may feel emboldened to do the same. This could gradually reshape global naval diplomacy, introducing greater uncertainty and complexity into military planning. Access would become conditional rather than assumed. Influence would depend more on diplomacy and mutual respect than on historical dominance. That would represent a fundamental shift in how maritime power is exercised. Ultimately, Brazil's decision is about more than the United States. It is about how nations define their place in a changing world. It reflects a growing confidence among emerging powers. It highlights the limits of military superiority. It underscores the importance of political legitimacy. And it serves as a reminder that sovereignty is not an outdated concept, it is a living principle shaping modern geopolitics. Brazil's restriction on U.S. warships is a wake up call for policymakers, strategists, and analysts around the world. The era of unchallenged naval freedom, especially in regions once considered predictable, is fading. In its place is a more complex, negotiated, and multipolar maritime environment. Understanding this shift is essential. This is not just a diplomatic disagreement. It is not just a regional issue. It is a signal of the geopolitical realities that will define the decades ahead. The rules are changing, the assumptions are being tested, and the balance of power at sea is entering a new chapter. Thank you for watching.